Hey, what's up YouTube? Down with Smartphone Guy coming back at you with another video, and tonight I want to talk about a device that's probably my favorite device of 2017. This is the Xiaomi Mi 6. Now, I have a huge caveat for why this might not be the best device for you, especially if you live in the United States, and that is the fact that, as you can see, I am only getting HSPA Plus service, and that is because, for the most part, if you live in the United States, you will only get HSPA Plus because the bands that this phone supports are primarily for overseas. So the one band that you will get in the United States is band 5. But with that being said, this is a flagship phone that you can pick up for less than $500. And I'll leave links down in the description for where you can pick it up. But actually, there'll be some coupon codes that will make it considerably cheaper even than the price you see here. So the version that I have is the 6 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of onboard storage. This version comes with a charger and of course the SIM removal tool, and then it also comes with a Type-C cord, and last but not least is our Type-C to headphone jack, because this phone does not have a headphone jack. So I've kind of already given two negatives, so you're asking what in the world makes this phone possibly my favorite phone of 2017. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So first of all, let's talk about the build quality. So build quality wise, this phone is absolutely beautiful. I would say so far, this is for me the second most beautiful phone you can get in 2017. However, this one's more practical than the other one. And so, of course, the most beautiful phone of 2017 right now has to be the S8, I think. But I'm not a huge fan of the curved front glass. So you can see this one actually has curved rear glass and just slight curved edges here along the edge of the glass. But for the most part, this is a flat front, which is what I prefer. A little bit more practical than having those edge screen. I can understand why Samsung decided to do it, but I just kind of prefer the more flat front. With that being said, let's go ahead and talk more about why this thing is such a beautiful device. So we have dual 12 megapixel cameras on the back, as well as dual flash there, dual tone flash. We have a speaker on the bottom as well as a microphone and Type-C port. You can see our antenna bands there at the bottom as well. So we have glass, all glass back, and you can see that actually it does a pretty good job of repelling fingerprints. So my fingers are pretty greasy at the moment, but it is doing a good job of repelling fingerprints, which I can't say as much for the case. You can see the case gets significantly more fingerprints. Now the front also has that same glass, so we're using Corning Gorilla Glass 5 on both the front and the back. And then we have a nice metallic edge around the outside of the phone as well, and we do actually have an IR blaster as well. So no headphone jack, but we do have that IR blaster. And one other feature that I really like about this phone is the fact that we have a speaker here and an earpiece that also doubles as a speaker. Now, the one thing that might also be a deal breaker for some people is the fact that this thing only has a 5.15-inch display. So kind of small. So the phone I'm coming from, directly from, is the Blade X Max. So you can see how large that phone is. So this is ZTE Blade X Max. That has a 6-inch display. This has a 5.15-inch display, both 1080p. So both have very, absolutely beautiful screens. This one does get very, very bright. So you can see here, we'll crank it all the way up here. So it gets very bright, easy to see in daylight, but also gets very, very dark. So if you're watching it in bed or looking at it in bed, absolutely no problems at all, because it gets very dim. So that 5.15-inch display might be a deal breaker for some people as well. So just kind of some things to keep in mind. So this is running a Snapdragon 835 octa-core processor clocked at 2.45 gigahertz. And I'm going to go ahead and show you, whoops, not that. I actually do want to show you this real quick. These are the speed tests, just so you know what you're going to get if you do pick this up. So at HSPA Plus speeds on T-Mobile, these are the download speeds I was getting. So you can see 8, 9.5, 5, 3, 4, 7, 4 or 5. So it looks like about 6 to 7 for megabits per second for the download speeds. And in terms of upload speeds, it looks like my average was right around 3. So definitely not going to be as fast as LTE, but still doable for some people. And so something just to kind of keep in mind. So the next thing I want to look at is the Geekbench score. And there you go. That's the Geekbench score for this phone. I actually ran that tonight. And you can see the single core score is quite high, almost 2,000, and the multi-core score is 6,587. And that is to say that pretty much anything you do on this phone, it doesn't really matter what games you throw at it, how many apps you have running, this thing can handle pretty much anything you throw at it, and it does it like a champ. So one thing I will mention though is in terms of, let's see, let's just try this out. So that's going into Nova Launcher there. Let's see, let's try jumping into Google. Will it jump? Yep, it jumps right back into it. So that was about 5 apps ago. Let's go into, what is that? That's a theme. Okay, so it jumped right into that. Go back even further. So it's looking at some orders on Amazon, so it jumped right into that. Oops. And let's see how far we can go back here and get it to still jump right into it. So Google Hangouts, yeah, so right back into where I was at. So you can see in terms of RAM management, it's also doing very well with that 6 gigs of RAM. So all the apps that I had in the background were still running with no problem. So in terms of performance, this thing is absolutely phenomenal. So I got to get my notes over here. So the next thing I want to talk about is the software on this device. So this is running Android 7.1.1. So we'll go back down here, and you can see here we're running Android 7.1.1 with MIUI, and this is running 8.2. And I will say that for the most part, I don't mind MIUI, but I definitely prefer Nova Launcher on top of it. There are some tweaks that I do like about MIUI. So one thing being, first of all, I didn't talk about that fingerprint sensor, but the fingerprint sensor is very fast. So I should probably just show you that real quick. So we'll just turn it off and on a few times just to kind of show you that, yeah, that fingerprint sensor is super fast. We have capacitive buttons on the bottom. So right now I have that as the back one and this one as the recent apps, but we can switch that. So that is in here in the notification status bar. Nope, I lied to you. That's not there. That's actually in, where's it at? Under additional settings. We can change that under buttons. Where's the buttons? There it is, buttons. So we do have that option under buttons, under navigation. We can switch that. We can also change what long pressing does. So right now I have home as launching Google Now, but you can see we can change that as well. We have some headphone effects, which I did actually pick up some Xiaomi headphones. So I'm going to try those out with this because you can see that it has some special settings for Xiaomi specific headphones and for other headphones as well, which is pretty cool. And we do have a one-handed mode, which for this phone, I don't know why you would really need it because it's pretty much a one-handed phone anyways. But some other things worth mentioning within the software, some tweaks that they add into this phone would be down here in second space. So, whoops, I hit the wrong one. So second space is right here. So as you can see, what it's doing is it's showing that it's splitting the phone, and second space allows you to essentially have 2 devices on your one device, which is pretty cool if you maybe need, you know, a home version and a work version of the same phone. So that's what second space does. And then we also have this one down here. Where's it at? Dual apps. Dual apps is also a very cool feature that most Xiaomi phones that I've used has, and that is that you can go ahead and have 2 Facebook apps on the same phone, 2 Messenger apps, 2 WhatsApp apps. But you can see the options that we have here. And what that does is, like, maybe you have a Facebook account for work and a Facebook account for your home or whatever, but maybe you have multiple accounts for certain apps. And this allows you to actually have both those apps on there without having to log back in and log back out of maybe the Facebook app or whatever app it might be. So that is a really cool feature as well. But overall, I'm not the biggest fan of MIUI, but I'm also not I don't hate it either. It is still Android 7.1.1, so got, of course, all of the goodies from Android Nougat built into the phone. Let me just mention real quick, though, before I get into it, that this is how I was using it. So I actually changed it to Nova Launcher, and so you guys can see what that looks like. So this is how I was using the device personally. That way I have this notification, or sorry, my apps, down here. So that's just my preference. Obviously, MIUI doesn't include the app drawer, so just something to keep in mind. In terms of battery life, I'm not going to jump into, I actually was charging a little bit earlier today because I never charged it overnight. But in general, I was getting, so this has, I should mention this, it has a 3350 milliamp hour battery, and it does include Quick Charge 3.0. And that is included in the box. But this thing easily lasts through a day for me. I'm getting about 5 or 6 hours of of screen on time, which for me, in a typical workday, that would get me to about 30%, maybe even 40% of battery remaining at the end of a day. And that's with a lot of mixed use, so gaming, social media, things like that. And even doing some YouTube videos with it, because this thing actually shoots pretty darn good video in my opinion. So that would be also another plus. So battery life is absolutely perfect for this phone. That 3350 milliamp hour battery will easily get most people through a day. So the next thing I want to talk about is the camera. So cameras on this phone, I would say maybe this would be kind of a, for the most part, very positive thing, but there are just a few areas where it did give me a miss in my opinion. So again, we got that dual 12 megapixel setup on the back. Video wise, I really like it. It shoots 4K video. You can see here, I'm going to go ahead and show these pictures at the end of the video as well if you're interested. But the area that I thought it kind of struggled, if I can show you here real quick, would be in indoor lighting. So this is kind of like lower lighting. But if you tried to use portrait mode in indoor lighting, so portrait mode is what gives you kind of like that bokeh effect. So if I can go into here to a picture, there it is. All right, so here's an example of a picture that I tried to do with bokeh effect. So what it does is it kind of blurs out the background and it gives you kind of just the focus on whatever it is that you're trying to focus on. But in indoor not so good of lighting, notice that even the picture that it was trying to focus on wasn't very good. Where if I look at that same picture without the bokeh effect or without that portrait mode turned on, it was actually a much better picture. So that's actually the first crash I've ever had on the phone, so that's interesting. But either way, the camera does work very well, and I'll show you some pictures at the end. But overall, video and camera quality is good, but portrait mode I think could use some work. Last thing that I want to talk about, and I'm sure there's something I'm probably missing because I don't have it written down, but we're going to go ahead and listen to some music because I want you guys to get an idea of what this sounds like. So let's jump into some music here. And we'll go to some thumbs up music, and I'm just gonna play let's do, well, that's not really let's do this one. All right, we're gonna crank it right up. Again, we got dual speakers here. Only listen to it for a second so I don't get in trouble, but I'm gonna go ahead and cover that one up. Notice that that one has a lot more volume, so you still hear it up here. Okay, we're going to pause that so I don't get in trouble. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put it right up to my microphone so you can hear it. This does get quite loud, and again, the loudest speaker is definitely down here, just kind of like a little added speaker up there. But let's go ahead and listen to this song, and I'm going to crank it right up, put it right up to my speaker here, or my microphone. I got this feeling inside my bones. Okay, so what I wanted to point out there is that it does get quite loud. It's not the, certainly not the bassiest. Maybe a little bit it's missing a little bit on the low end. I'll eventually get that out. But yeah, so it's missing a little on the low end, but that's pretty typical of most cell phone speakers. But it is nice that they give you those dual speakers, one front firing and one bottom firing. But overall, this phone has been absolutely fantastic for me. Now I am going to be switching over to the LG Stylo 3 Plus to review that phone. But overall, I would say this has been a fantastic phone. Build quality, performance, the software is not too bad. Battery life is fantastic. The cameras are also very good, and it even has dual speakers. So it hits kind of all of those things that I want in a device, and it does them all very, very well. So either way, thanks for watching. Hopefully this answers some questions for you if you're thinking about picking up the Xiaomi Mi 6. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section. Otherwise, I will see you all in the next video. Peace.